Morning, everybody. It's Monday morning. Welcome to Penn Vicarage as we continue our adventure through the Psalms. Lovely to see you. I hope you've had a lovely weekend. It looks like a nice sunny day today, so looking forward to today. Also delighted for Facebook have let me back onto St. Bart's Facebook page again, so wonderful for that. By the way, if I ever disappear again, it's not that I've stopped doing the talks, just check out St. Anne's in Lower Penn. For some reason they think I'm filling with spam or something like that, which I'm sure I'm not doing. But if they ever take me down again like they did a few days ago, then just check out St. Anne's in Lower Penn and you'll find the talks on there as well. So next time it happens, check out St. Anne's. Today, my friends, we're in Psalm 120, so here goes. In my distress I cry to the Lord that he may answer me. Deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. What shall be given to you, and what more shall be done to you, you deceitful tongue, a warrior's sharp arrows with glowing coals of the broom tree? Woe is me that I'm an alien in Meshech, that I must live among the tents of Kedar. Too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So we've gone from one of the longest chapter in the Bible to one of the shorter ones, Psalm 120. It's the next few psalms are what's called a song of ascents. The next 15 psalms are all called a song of ascents. We're not entirely sure what that means. We think it's almost certainly some kind of we think it's 15 psalms that are to do with pilgrimage, a kind of pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and they may have been used on their ascent to Jerusalem kind of thing. So the next 15, of which 120 is the first of a whole lot of song of ascents. And they're all songs of ascents, but they're all slightly different. They all give a slightly different take on it. So it's important we sort of take them all together. So it's Psalm 120, the first of these songs of ascents. And as I say, it's basically a kind of song of pilgrimage. And the psalm is essentially in three parts. There's verses 1 and 2, there's 3 and 4, and there's 5 to 7. Verse 1 and 2 talk really, it's a heartfelt cry to God. You mentioned the word Lord gets mentioned twice, and it's really a kind of a heartfelt cry to God. In my distress, I cry to you, O Lord. In my distress, I cry to the Lord, he may answer me. So the context is he's in some degree of distress. And what the problem is, he says, deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. He's surrounded by people who are telling lies about him, the psalmist is, who are saying awful things about him. And as I say, we often think, with words, you can just turn them off or ignore them. It's not like that, is it? Words are very, as I said at 8 o'clock service yesterday, the book of James talks about bridling your tongue. You can do a lot of good with your tongue, and you can also do a lot of damage as well. You can tell someone you love them with your tongue. You can tell somebody about the gospel of Jesus Christ with a tongue. You can say hello, you can be welcoming. You can do lots of lovely things with your tongue. You can also tell lies. You can also spread gossip. You can also be deceitful and say awful things with your tongue as well. So I think what 1 and 2 reminds us is that the context is this guy is in considerable distress because people have been telling lies about him. We don't know what the lies are. We don't know where it was told either. But we do know that these lies have caused him considerable distress. And I think it's important to recognize how much it can hurt. And in a sense, from our point of view, practically speaking, to make sure we use our mouths for good. Make sure we're using our mouths to preach the gospel and proclaim what is good. That we're using our mouths to build people up, not try and bring people down. That our mouths are used for spreading the gospel, not doing other things. So that's verses 1 and 2. Hearing the distress of the man because of what lies can do, and bearing in mind, and actually making sure that we ask God to protect us and to make sure that we use our tongues for good. Then in verse 3 and 4, you've got what the psalmist would like to happen to them. What shall be given to you, and what shall be done to you? A warrior's sharp arrows with glowing coals of the broom tree. In other words, his hope is that these people will be that they'll have arrows and burning arrows will be sent at them. That's kind of what he hopes. Now, again, it's one of these psalms that kind of it doesn't read very well to us. It kind of reads vengefully, and it doesn't read like nice talk. It's not the sort of thing you're encouraging your church to do, for example. Of course, it isn't, and it reads quite difficult. It reads quite badly to us at first view. What I would say though is I think the kind of way in which we as Christians can deal with these thoughts is, whether we like it or not, we do have thoughts about like this sometimes. None that whenever when people hurt us, we do have times when we can feel vengeful. And I suppose it's important that we acknowledge that that is in us, rather than pretending it's not there and pretending that we can rise above this kind of thing. And of course, we never have thoughts like that, do we? Of course, rather than thinking like that, it's better in a sense to acknowledge the fact that we do feel this, because we're human and because we get hurt and we get angry and so on. The fact is that we all feel like this in different ways from different times. But what is different here is the psalmist isn't actually doing it. He simply brings that feeling to God. He tells God what he'd like God to do to them, but then leaves it in God's hands. And I think that's a better way of doing it. And actually, it's a statement of faith. It's about, we have these feelings. We're upset, we're hurt, we're angry, and so on. And it's much better, rather than taking revenge ourselves, but to hand over the feelings to God and let God deal with them. And that is much better than either pretending we don't think this kind of thing, because whether we like it or not, we do. And it's certainly better than doing it. It's much better that we hand these feelings over to God and tell God, and actually, if that's how you feel about it, tell God how you feel about it. God knows better. God's got broad shoulders. God's wise. God knows what he's doing, and God knows what needs to be done. So actually, when we have these feelings, as we all do sometimes, anger, revenge, or whatever it may be, don't brush it under the carpet. Acknowledge that it's there. Bring it before God and let God deal with it accordingly. And that's what I think Psalm 120 does here. And I think that's a much wiser way of dealing the way we're feeling. Then in verses 5 to 7, he talks about where he's at. And he talks about, woe is me, because where he's at. He's at Meshech and Kedar. Now, these are very interesting places because, interesting enough, Meshech is way up north. It's way north of Israel. And Kedar is way down south. So in a sense, he's taken the farthest north and the farthest south. So what he's basically saying is he's away from home. That's what he's, woe is me, because I'm a long way from home, whether I'm up north, whether I'm south. I mean, I think what it represents here is he's basically saying he's a long way from home, amongst a lot of people who he's trying to be peaceful, but they're wanting war. And I think what he's really doing here is he's saying, I want to go home. That's what he's really saying. He's a long way from home, and he wants to. He's amongst people that aren't very nice, and he just wants to come home. And as soon as he says, "I am for peace," I am for peace. But the word Jerusalem, Shalom, actually means city of peace. That's what it means. I think he longs for Jerusalem. I think he longs for home, and that's what he's really saying at the beginning of his pilgrimage to Jerusalem. He's saying, I'm a long way from woe is me. I'm a long way from home, be it north or be it south. It's figurative. But he's I think he's basically saying, I want to come home. That's where I want to be. I want to be in the city of peace again. And I think there's a sense in which we as Christians need to remember that actually, whatever's going on for us now, actually, our ultimate home, our ultimate New Jerusalem is heaven with God. And that's where we ultimately want to be. That's our final home. There's a story, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a good story, about an American missionary to Africa or something. And he was away from home. And he was on his way back home again after one of his trips or whatever. And he found himself on the same boat as the President of America. And of course, when they got back, there was a massive great fanfare for the arrival back of the President, and hardly anyone was there for him. And in his prayers, he kind of complained to God, why is it when I come home, I get this, when the president comes to him, he gets that. And he felt the response from God, but you're not home. You're not home yet. And I think there's something we need to remember about that, actually, that ultimately for us, however home we may feel, actually our ultimate destiny, our final home is in heaven. And we are not home yet. And that's where we want to be. And actually, I think in Psalm 120, I think what he's saying is by talking about Meshech in the north and Kedar in the south. And I think what he's saying is, I want to come home. I want to be on my pilgrimage, and I'm dying to get to Jerusalem. So 3 things in this psalm. Firstly, verses 1 and 2 about the importance of what we can do with our mouths, acknowledging that we can get hurt by words and using our tongues for the gospel. Secondly, verses 3 and 4 about not brushing our vengeful feelings under the carpet, acknowledging that they're there, but instead of doing anything about it, actually bringing them before God and letting God deal with them. And finally, to remember in verses 5 to 7 that ultimately for us, our eventual home, our final home, is our heavenly home, the New Jerusalem. Jerusalem the golden, with milk and honey blessed. And that's what the place of land of milk and honey, our place for us, our eventual home with God in heaven. And that is our final home. And for now, we ain't home yet. Friends, tomorrow, Psalm 121, one we all know well. Do please share this message with your friends so other people can enjoy them too. Don't forget, as I said at the beginning, if ever they block me off to Mark's Facebook again, just go to St. Anne's. You'll find the message on there. Well, have a lovely day.